Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Delivering Dunamis podcast, where we are inspiring transformation through the strength and the power of the Almighty. My name is Matthew Dibler, and I'm your host, and I'd like to welcome you to our fourth installment of Thirsty Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, the thirst that can only be quenched by the living water, the power of the Holy Spirit. So excited to be here with you today. The message that I have to share, I'm going to call it high definition. High definition. And I wanted to begin this message by looking back to a memory from my childhood. So I was probably about 10 years old at the time. And I was playing Little League Baseball. And it was in that experience where I started to recognize that I wasn't seeing things quite clearly. I remember standing in the batter's box and having a hard time following the pitch. And I mentioned this to my parents, and they thought, well, maybe it's worth, taking him to the eye doctor and having his vision checked. Because I was kind of complaining that things were, a little bit fuzzy. And I went and had that checkup, and it did reveal that I needed corrective lenses. And so I got my first pair of glasses. And I'll never forget what it felt like putting those glasses on for the first time. I remember telling my mom and dad that it was amazing when I stepped outside and, for example, looked at the leaves on the trees, because there was so much clarity, so much detail. And I could essentially pick it out in each individual leaf on that tree. It was something I had never remembered doing before. It was amazing going from standard definition, what I was used to, what I had grown accustomed to, and now seeing things in high def. And then when I got back to baseball and, I got back in the batter's box, I could see the pitch coming off of the hand of my opponent on the mound. And it was as though I could see the seams of the ball. I could follow that pitch so much more closely. And that allowed me to swing with much greater confidence in my ability to not only make contact, but drive the ball. Now I wasn't so much concerned with just, making some solid contact, but I was looking to actually hit the ball into the gap, knock it over the fence. And with that confidence that I had with my high definition vision, I started to play a lot better. And that felt good. This reminds me a lot of the experiences that I've had with the Holy Spirit. Since it's come into my life, I have embraced this new standard of kind of the high definition living. When the Spirit came upon me in that season of my rebirth, the way that I approached life, it became totally different. I saw things in the world around me. I saw the interactions between myself and others differently. I felt the presence of positive and negative influences, good and evil, there was this power of discernment that came over me. And it was amazing. I felt like I could see God's influence in every aspect of my life at all times. This is when I really developed this understanding that there are truly no coincidences. And in recognizing that, I looked for the meaning in everything. I looked for God's work, his guidance in everything. And I started then shaping my life around that, the decisions that I made around that, because I knew when he was leading me a certain direction, and I knew when there were, warnings ahead, pitfalls, perhaps, step this direction, not that direction. It was really quite powerful, seeing for the first time, because I had lived my life in a completely different manner up until that point. I didn't recognize it. And I think this is something that, is worth sharing here, that many people who are kind of walking around in that fog, in that haze, in that blurred vision, they don't even, recognize that they're in that space because it's all that they know. So they've just grown accustomed to it. You get used to it and you don't even desire anything different because you don't really know that it's out there. You've just adapted to seeing things in the manner that you do. And the world kind of supports that as well. The world supports a culture that is essentially tuned out to God, tuned out to this living in the Holy Spirit. Everything around us, it's kind of like people are just moving in the busyness of life. They're consumed by it. They're consumed by the desires of their flesh and the temptations that surround them. And so they're operating kind of in that world without any recognition of God's presence or a higher standard, perhaps, of living, higher definition. But not all hope is lost. Because I can tell you that God can turn things like this around in people's lives in an instant. And I know that because he did in mine. I wasn't making a very committed effort to seek the Lord and to, embody a different vision. He sought me. He made his presence known in such a way that I could not deny it. And that made me then very curious. Who is this God? I want to know a little bit more about him. This is pretty amazing. It gave me an appetite, gave me a thirst, actually, for the living water. And then in seeking, I began to understand that presence. It gave me more. And my vision changed. I began to see through the corrective lens of Christ. Perfect vision. And once you see in that manner, you'll never want to go back. You'll wonder how you navigated life without the presence of the Holy Spirit in the past. It'll seem impossible to you. How could you have survived it? Think about the days now where we've got these giant 70-inch TV screens that you can buy now for less than like $500, which is just incredible. 4K, ultra high definition, whatever. But do you remember the days? I do, being little and sitting in front of kind of that box TV that was more a piece of furniture than it was a TV, turning the knob on the dial or, punching in the buttons, opening up the TV guide. Remember what it was like watching TV in standard definition? At the time, it seemed great, right? No issues with this. But then when high def came out, wow. And now we've grown so accustomed to it that we're spoiled in a sense. We don't even see the value of that high definition television any longer. But my point here that I'm making is, you can grow pretty accustomed to living in the fogginess, in the blurriness of a life without the Holy Spirit. But when it comes upon you, the difference is going to be so remarkable. You're going to wonder, how did I ever watch things unfold in my life in standard definition like that in the past? You'll never want to go back. Flip on a standard definition television today. If you can find one, if you can even get access to standard definition television. I don't even know if it's possible anymore. But if you can, flip one on at some point and just remind yourself how far we have come. Well, it's like that times a million in your faith journey. When you flip on the Holy Spirit, everything changes. And it becomes so much easier to navigate life. And you can do so with great confidence. Just like me stepping back into that batter's box with those corrective lenses on, I was a much more confident hitter at that point in time. And I became more successful as a result of it. Same thing goes with life with the Holy Spirit. You can dive into anything with great confidence because you now have a vision for how, whatever endeavor you are involved with, for how to be successful in it. Because your success and your vision, it's now aligned with the will of God. And in Him, there's no such thing as failure. And there's no such thing as fear, because perfect love, the love of Christ, it drives out all fear. So you can step forward with confidence and boldness in everything that you do. Living in high definition is something that every child of God should desire. We should all thirst for that. It's so fulfilling, so rewarding. Life just takes on such different meaning when we have the eyes of the Holy Spirit. in us. I love you all. God bless.